The day has not yet come, but it does have a release version set. So both GNOME and KDE have been Wayland first for a very long time now. Honestly, probably getting close to a decade. I don't know the exact number of years, but I would say about that long, with GNOME for the past couple of years pushing incredibly hard to drop the X11 session entirely. I believe they were aiming for GNOME 49, but plans had to change. And earlier this year on the KDE side for Plasma 6.4, there was a split in Kwin, making it so you can actually install a Wayland-only session, and the X11 part was an additional thing you had to install. At the time this blog post was released. Now, I mention it because of an excerpt from the end here. There are no plans to drop Kwin/X11 in the Plasma 6 lifecycle, although it's highly possible that it will happen in Plasma 7. That was the general assumption most people were working under. However, plans have changed. Better yet, now they actually have plans. Going all in on a Wayland future. I am personally apprehensive about this change, leaning towards not yet being in favor. However, this is not something happening in the next release, or even the release after that. This is still a while away. KDE Plasma 6.8 will be Wayland exclusive. Under normal circumstances, this would put it as the third release of 2026, putting it sometime around October of that year, with 6.7 releasing around June 2026, and then being supported by the KDE team until early 2027. 6.7 is the last version that'll have the X11 session around. However, we cannot provide a specific date, as we're exploring the possibility of shipping some extra bug fix releases for Plasma 6.7. The exact timing of the last one will be known when we get closer to its actual release, which we expect to be sometime in early 2027. So, it's a weird release where it may be later than expected, but I'm not sure. What if I still really need X11? Basically just use an LTS distribution, shipping older versions of Plasma. Alma 9 will have it supported until 2032. Keep in mind that is support by the distribution, not support by upstream, so if there are bugs, if there are issues, that is entirely on the distro to fix, and the kind of support you're going to get is really going to depend on the project, and in many cases, it may not really be support, it may just be packages available. With that in mind, however, anytime a big change happens in KDE, usually it leads to a fork. This is how we have Katana, this is how we have Trinity. I will not be surprised if there is a fork of Plasma 6. Currently, I'm not aware of any, but we'll have to wait and see. It's entirely possible it doesn't happen, but I have my doubts. As for the X11 forwarding enjoyers, as a reminder, X-Wayland is an X11 server, and you can do X11 forwarding with it. It's not something often talked about, but it is supported. As for native Wayland applications, you can use things like Wavepipe. Also, this change is only about Plasma. It is not about KDE libraries. So if you're running something like Kdenlive, for example, or various other things on a desktop outside of Plasma, that is still going to be supported on X11. Obviously, this is up to the individual developers, and they may choose to drop X11 support if they just don't want to support it. As for gaming, this is one of the areas where it kind of just works better on Wayland. Adaptive sync, optional tearing, so if you want the extra input response time from having tearing be possible, you can go and enable that. If you just don't want any tearing, at the cost of some level of input delay, you can do that as well. Both options are there. High refresh rate multi-monitor setups are all supported out of the box, and HDR gaming works with some additional setup as well. KDE does support HDR. When I was digging around for this, I saw a really weird comment regarding gaming, saying Valve would fork KDE because of this Wayland move, as if they don't already run every single game on the Steam Deck inside of GameScope. a Wayland compositor. I don't know where they got this idea from. Now, the big one, Nvidia. So, Nvidia for a very long time was effectively unusable on Wayland. Nowadays, though, it's a little bit different. It's not perfect. So, really old cards, those are supported by Novo, and those work really well on Wayland. New cards, anything 2000 and newer, those also, if you have up-to-date drivers, work really well on Wayland. There is this weird middle area where they're too old to be supported by the modern proprietary drivers, but too new to work with Novo because they're in this weird middle period where they don't support GSP firmware, but they also moved a bunch of stuff off of being controlled by the drivers. So those cards, they're basically a mess. If you're not in that weird middle, you should have a good experience. As for accessibility, this is a very big topic. Things like screen readers, sticky and bounce keys, zooming, all the basic stuff, all of that works as expected. Of course, there's going to be bugs. Of course, there's going to be weird edge cases, but this basically just works. And some things are better. Touchpad gestures for adjusting zoom level, and applying system-wide color filters to correct for color blindness. And there's going to be a lot more improvements before 6.8 rolls around. This is not something where nobody is worrying about the problem. This is something where, as Wayland has become a lot more of a focus, people realize they actually need to take this problem seriously. As for third-party applications, this is a whole nother story, and some may be worse in some aspects. Right now is the time to go and report any bugs you have. Right now is the time to go and say, hey, is this going to be supported? Because both of the major desktops are moving over to Wayland. And this is not something where, fundamental Wayland functionality can be left out anymore. If they're going to be serious accessibility tools, they need to deal with these problems. Now, automation is a weird one because a lot of stuff does work. You can automate copy and pasting. There is YDO tool. YDO tool does require root access. For things you don't want to use YDO tool for, you can use KDE tool. There are other tools like K-Screen Doctor and the Plasma Apply tools for, changing your wallpaper, color theme, things like that. And there is a lot you can do through Kwin scripts and plugins. This is not going to be every single thing you can do on X11. And this is an area where there is still discussion happening on the kinds of things they want to support. So if there is a thing that is currently not possible on Wayland, get involved in the discussion because people want to see this working. It's just a matter of knowing what use cases people actually have. Screen capture, for example, is an area where automation basically doesn't exist. I hope this is a problem that can be taken seriously. As for things like headless RDP, headless remote desktop, this is going to be coming with the new login manager that replaces SDDM. Right now, the limitation there is SDDM and its lack of integration into the Plasma environment. This is expected to be available before this change is made. On that note of screen capture, however, they do have a thing called XDG Portal Pre-Authorization. Right now, this is only used with the remote desktop portal. This is basically a way to say, I want this application to be able to automatically go and select things. I would like to see this extended to include screen capture as well. Make it so I can open up OBS and it just grabs whatever it wants. Currently with screen capture, we'll remember things like the monitor that is selected, but for applications, that's not exactly a thing. And you have to go and reselect the application every time there is a new session available. If it is the same window, it will be remembered though. One thing KDE has is the list of known significant issues. These are basically the Wayland blockers. And a lot of these things, this list is a lot shorter than the last time I showed it, a lot of these things are basically on their way to being resolved, or there is already some sort of plan to go and resolve it. That doesn't mean all of these are easy things that are going to be fixed tomorrow. Things like global menu support for non-acute apps. This is, at least for the GTK stuff, not going to be fixed because, well, GTK doesn't really care about that problem anymore. But as for the other stuff, like no headless RDP, that actually has a plan in store. The graphics tablet stuff, that is very much in progress. Slow keys, things like that. All of these things are mostly on their way to being fixed. There is a longer list available as well, and some of these things are a bit further out. There is still some task automation stuff that, again, people would like to see. With that, again, get involved, explain things that need to be fixed, things of that nature. As for the BSDs, this is an interesting case because FreeBSD has support for Wayland and has supported it for I don't even know how many years at this point. OpenBSD, I know a couple of years ago, were working on some experimental Sway stuff. I'm not sure how far that progressed. As for NetBSD and any of the others, I don't actually know what they're doing. I don't know if they're just not going to resolve the problem or where that's going to go. So the uncomfortable truth for Unix is at this point, Linux is Unix. Almost all of the developers are Linux first developers. And I know for BSD people, this is not something that is a great state to be in. But if you want to change that, you have to get involved with these projects and bring in the code you want. Because people that are not using BSD and have no plans to use BSD are not likely to be fixing BSD problems. The bottom line. This is happening because we believe that eventually dropping the Plasma X11 session will allow us to move faster to improve stability and functionality for the majority of our users who are already using Wayland. If we want to keep producing the best free desktop out there, we have to be nimble enough to adapt to a rapidly changing environment with many opportunities, without the need to drag forward legacy support that holds back a great deal of work. The Wayland transition has been long, and at times painful, but we're very close to the finish line. Passing it will unlock a lot of positive changes over the next few years that we think folks are going to appreciate. This has had quite a number of interesting responses. One of those being a DDoS of KDE infrastructure very shortly after the announcement. Now, it may be unrelated. Hey, maybe someone's just like, you know what? I'm gonna DDoS KDE right now. I don't think it's unrelated, though. That's not going to change anyone's minds, though. Don't be weird. What are you doing? Also, a Fedora packager was not very happy about this change. KDE bait and switch on X11 support. X11 packages will be switching to forks by Fedora 46 at the latest. From Kevin Koffler, as the packager of K1 X11 and Plasma Workspace X11, I condemn this user-hostile and unforeseen policy reversal and will be hard at work to limit the damage to Fedora users to a minimum. Therefore, I plan to switch the K1 X11 package to one of the forks already out there, see something like KDE Lite, K1 X11 Lite, somewhere between now and the release of Plasma 6.8. I plan to switch the Plasma Workspace X11 package to a fork if it is available, somewhere between now and the release of Plasma 6.8. If not, I will either freeze its version at 6.7.x, there are already no more hard version dependencies preventing such a freeze, or fork that version myself, or apply reverts of the removal commits to 6.8, whatever turns out to make more sense. I may have to fork or ship someone else's fork of other parts of Plasma, e.g. some KCMs, starting from Plasma 6.8, and we'll be looking into how to deliver these safely without conflicting with Plasma Wayland. Keep in mind, whilst Fedora KDE has been very interested in going Wayland-only, this is not something that is universally supported. There are people that do want to keep the X11 side around. After the fact, he did realize maybe that was a little bit too aggressive, and it was pointed out that wording like bait and switch is overly accusatory. I needed a catchy phrase for the subject, so I may have gone overboard there. If so, I would like to apologize for that. To be clear, my position is that claiming there are no plans to remove something before release N appears to imply that you can expect this to be available until release N, and that this was misleading communication at the very least. I hope this clears things up. Now, over on Reddit, the blog post was posted, of course it was, on both the KDE subreddit and the Linux subreddit. On the KDE subreddit, there have been a number of KDE devs that are basically trying to answer as many questions as possible, kind of as a way to just limit the amount of damage this is going to do, because no matter when this happened, even if it was like 10 years from now, there would still be some level of anger. But doing so now, even though the thing is happening about a year from now, does lead to some, let's just say, anger. And throughout this video, a lot of the clarifications I've made have come directly from these KDE devs. So if you want to check them out for yourself, I'll leave this thread link down below. There is one I want to highlight though, from Hattie Choker, someone that hangs out in my Discord. And if you couldn't tell they hung out in my Discord, someone asked for the ability to specify a primary monitor for gaming like you can do on X11. He said, pretty sure Valve will just bully its way through Wayland to fix this like they did before for other stuff, which is very much in line with something I would say. Now, as for my stance on this change, personally, I would have liked to see KDE hold out on X11 for as long as possible. Plasma 7 was gonna be that hard endpoint, and that's what I would have liked to see happen. There are still a number of issues like EXT zones, like letting Windows position themselves where they want to position themselves, that are kind of out of the hands of KDE, and likely won't be resolved for many years to come. Now, there are KDE devs that are opposed to this being fixed, so whether or not it even would be fixed in the first place is a whole nother question. However, I do understand the desire to move on before then. So there is a comment from David Edmondson. At this point, we really have no idea when Plasma 7 will be. It could be in 2 or in 10 years. We'll have to go with the flow on that based on how things pan out. This also depends on when Qt 7 comes out. And at this stage, that doesn't have a discussion, let alone a release date for Qt 7. From my experience with KDE devs, they take the missing functionality of the Wayland session very seriously. This is not something being done with no consideration for that. But I do understand why some people might be disappointed, and this may be a reason to leave Plasma. Now, the majority of people for a long time now have been on the Wayland side. This has been the case for at least 5 years now. But at the same time, there are still people held back, and hopefully your use case can be arranged by then. If it is not something being discussed, get involved in the issue tracker, because if people don't know the use case exists, the use case will not be fixed. I want to know what you think about this, and I know the KDE devs watch this, and hopefully if there are issues raised, these issues can be taken seriously, because there are still issues that people do raise that are still issues. Now, there are issues that people raise that are not still issues, but they don't know that something has been fixed. So maybe some sort of FAQ documentation on the Wayland transition can be produced based on these answers. I don't know. Let me know what you think down below. So, if you liked the video, go like the video. If you really liked the video and you want to become one of these amazing people over here, check out the Patreon, Scribes, Daily Bearer Pay, linked in the description down below. That's going to be it for me, and I can't wait till the day this comes, because, ooh, there's going to be some fun.